Well, good evening, Beaumont. Glad to have you guys here on the show today. Be sure to like and share and tell your friends about Freedom 1300. Well, Donald Trump is a little bit upset about the slow drip of diplomacy with Mexico because they've been stealing American water for decades and they're refusing to pay for it. The United States and Mexico have been mired in this dispute over their failure to live up to the 1944 Water Treaty, under which Mexico sends Texas water from the Rio Grande, while the U.S. sends Mexico water from the Colorado River. This spring, Mexico continues to fall short on its promises. After all, Mexico is a third world country now that is completely run by the drug cartels. Most of the people are in abject poverty, and then the drug cartels, of course, live like kings. But anyway, Mexico continues to fall short. They denied a request for water for Tijuana by the State Department, marking the first time that the U.S. has actually enforced this treaty. The current deal calls for 490 billion gallons of water from the U.S. to flow to Mexico each year, while they're supposed to give us 570 billion gallons from Mexico coming north. Although earlier this year the dispute seemed to be moving toward a solution, President Trump took to Truth Social to say that Mexico is still leaving America high and dry. He said, the U.S. needs Mexico to release 200,000 acre-feet of water before December 31st, and the rest must come soon after. As of now, Mexico is not responding, and it's very unfair to our American farmers who deserve this much-needed water. That is why I authorized a documentation to impose a 5% tariff on Mexico if this water is not released. The longer Mexico takes to release the water, the more our farmers are damaged. Mexico has an obligation to fix this now. Thank you for your attention on the matter. Once again, yes, they do have a president down there, President Scheinbaum. I mean, what's the world coming to when the Mexican president's named Scheinbaum? But we all know that the drug cartels are the ones that run Mexico, and Scheinbaum can do exactly what she's told by the drug cartels and nothing less. But then on the other hand, then you have Chicago, which is completely overrun by the Sinaloa drug cartels, where they have about 10 foot soldiers for every Chicago Police Department officer. Anyway, Mexico still owes us over 800,000 acre-feet of water for failing to comply with our treaty over the last 5 years. And of course, we need to release to them 200,000 acre-feet of water before December. The U.S. needs Mexico to release the 200,000 acre-feet of water before December 31st, or they're not going to get any more water from us. And although Mexico had promised to send the water to Texas farmers by October, they did not deliver. Apparently, they're having some problems, however, with their drug shipments. This is why Donald Trump authorized the 5% tariff, and I think that's a great idea. I, on the other hand, personally believe that we should annex Mexico. Let's face it, all of the Mexicans want to come here to work because America has a great economy, and down there, the drug cartels control and run everything. If we annex Mexico, that would give us a much smaller border to defend on the southern end, and we could revitalize and make Mexico great again. We could send Rick Perry down there to be the governor. So this needs to be solved. The Texas farmers are suffering. Brian Jones, a farmer in Hidalgo County in Texas, and a Texas Farm Bureau board member said that we are running out of water quickly, and the sugar industry is lost to Texas and will never return if we don't get that water. So we hope that all works out, but seriously, let's annex Mexico. It's just past time. In other news, the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal, it's a privately owned bank, and they don't apparently have any reserve because they have resisted every attempt to audit them going all the way back to the early 1900s. So we don't know if they have any money or not, but they've been fleecing, literally robbing the American people since their inception. Anyway, the Federal Reserve faces contentious meetings this week. It's going to test Chair Jerome Powell's ability to corral the necessary support to continue to rob the American people. Actually, they're talking about cutting the interest rates again. But the truth is, under Obama, they actually paid the banks to take the money. They did that because they were trying to prop up a Marxist regime. Jerome Powell and associates at the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank, owned by the 6 or 7 European families, they hate Donald Trump. They just hate him with a passion, and they're doing everything they can to thwart him. Of course, they're failing, but their 19-member rate-setting committee is sharply divided on whether to lower borrowing costs again. The divisions have been exacerbated by the convoluted nature, in their mind, of the economy. They say inflation remains elevated. Well, that's because Bidenomics is not over yet, and I happen to know from analyzing the last 100 years of data that any major change to the leadership of the financial institutions in the United States takes about 2 years before you actually see the effects on the street, sometimes up to 3 years. Donald Trump is so good at what he's doing, it's going to be a little less than 2 years. But let's face it, Donald Trump has only been president for a few months. He hasn't even been there a year yet. So some economists expect at least 3 federal bank officials, which is not federal, it's a privately owned bank, would vote against a quarter-point cut that Powell is likely to support at the December 9th meeting. So that would mean most dissenting votes in 6 years. Just 12 of the 19 members get to vote on rate decisions. Several of the non-voting officials have also said they oppose cutting the rate too because, let's face it, they are robbing the American people blind, and they want as much money as possible for doing essentially nothing. It's a tricky time. Perfectly sensible people can reach different answers, said William English, an economist at the Yale School of Management and a former top Fed staff member. And the committee kind of likes work by consensus, but this is a situation where it's hard to reach a consensus. You got those people that are just filthy rich and greedy as hell, and they want to get their share of it. Remember that one Fed bank chair that was actually buying houses and properties in multiple states and claiming they were all her primary resident. Well, that is the quality of people that you find at the Federal Reserve. Rules for thee, not for me. The debate has been fueled by a lack of official federal data on employment and inflation during the during the Schumer shutdown. And that could be a preview of where the Fed is headed after Powell's term as chair ends in May. His successor will be appointed by President Donald Trump, and it's widely expected to be Kevin Hassett. And he is the top White House economic advisor, and Hassett will undoubtedly push for faster rate cuts than the other officials are going to be willing to support. But that's because Donald Trump has absolutely eliminated inflation. Inflation, it doesn't exist anymore. The problem is the prices went up so high during the Biden Marxist regime that it's just going to take a while to get them back down. But you've already noticed, for instance, that just on the Thanksgiving meal alone, you spent about 35% less than you spent last year. So that's a big change. Mr. English said the potential for greater disagreement can be seen as a healthy sign of debate between these different views. The Federal Reserve Bank's tradition of reaching unanimous or nearly unanimous decisions has often been criticized as evidence of groupthink because they are all Marxist. And remember, the Federal Reserve was created to deprive Americans of liberty. Yet, some of the federal officials warn there are downsides to sharp splits. If the committee votes end up 8-4 or even 7-5, then financial markets might lose confidence in the fake privately owned Federal Reserve Bank. The federal governor, that would be Christopher Waller, for instance, has said that in the case of a 7-5 vote, if just one official changed their view, it could bring about a significant shift in Fed policy. For now, however, most economists expect what's called a hawkish cut. The Fed will reduce rates, probably by a quarter point, also signaling that it may stand pat for some time to assess the economy's health. In other words, to rape and rob the American people. Hawks referred to officials who generally support higher rates to combat inflation, which doesn't exist, while doves are more often in support of lowering rates to boost hiring. The president of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank, Jeffrey Schmidt, is expected to dissent for the second straight meeting in favor of keeping rates unchanged. They are making massive profits on America right now, and they don't want to change that. After the Fed's last meeting, October 28th, 29th, several policy members said they'd prefer to keep the rates unchanged at the December meeting, leading Wall Street investors to briefly downgrade the odds of a third rate cut to less than 30%. Investors rapidly lifted odds of the cut, which are now 89%. We hope so. President Trump sharply criticized Powell last month, expressing a desire to remove him, and he used disparaging language regarding his performance, which was absolutely true. The Fed is required by Congress to seek low inflation, maximum employment, and two goals that are potentially in conflict at this moment. But once again, Congress does not control the Fed. The president does not control the Fed. It is a privately owned bank. There are no stockholders. It's all an illusion. It's not federal. They don't have a reserve. And all of the families benefiting from this live in Europe. For now, Powell and many other Fed officials are more concerned about hiring and unemployment rather than inflation. While the official government jobs report has been delayed, in September the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.4, the third straight increase and the highest in 4 years. Well, apparently there was some truth to the fact that the illegal aliens were buying stuff in America, but nonetheless, I'm glad to see them gone. I just want to see the rest of them gone. Anyway, there are worries that the job market might get worse, and that's a key reason for the rate cut in December, likely, but not necessarily beyond that. Fed officials will still have up to 3 months of backlog jobs and inflation data to look at when they meet in January, and those figures could show inflation remains stubbornly high or that hiring has rebounded, which would suggest further cuts are not needed. But I'm here to tell you further cuts are needed. The correct interest rate for the Fed should be 0.25%. They're still raping and robbing the American citizens blind, but having it higher than that is ridiculous. Because if you want to buy a house and the Fed rate is 4%, well, guess what? You're going to be paying 6 to 8% on a mortgage when you should be paying at the most 2.5 to 3%. You know, like it was during the Obama regime. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all for checking it out. Please like and share. Tell your friends about Freedom 1300. You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.